My name is Jimmy Laval, also known as the Album Leaf, and we're here at Lincoln Hall in Chicago. So this is my rig. It's my synth station, space station. I have basically at the heart is my Novation Summit. This is a really great synth because I'm able to stack and split different synth sounds within one patch. So it has a multifunction right here, which is what I use pretty much the entire show. And then basically, this button right here selects which voice we're hearing. So this is A, and then all of these functions on the board here will manipulate only A, and if you go to B, all of these will do only B. So you basically have two synths in one. And the way that I usually do it and utilize it is basically I kind of have like lead things up here, maybe chord stuff down here, or I'm like splitting it so I'm just using everything all at once. And that's pretty much how I use the synth. Down here is a Novation Peak, and essentially this was the first version. This is kind of their first Novation's first synth that is of this mountain range, like they call it, the peak and the summit. But essentially this is a 8-voice synth, 3 oscillator, it's digital, and it does not have a keyboard on it, so that's what this guy's for right here. This is just a Keith McMillan Q-Nexus controller, and essentially just lets me goes into here, which is an expander, MIDI expander, which essentially just kind of is a middleman to communicate between the two. And right here is a make noise no coast, and I basically kind of have this set to a drone patch. It's getting note information from Ableton, and I'm able to kind of just pull it in and manipulate audio, manipulate it, on the fly as I see it fit. And it's going through a reverb and through a delay, and then into my RAAYS mixer. Everything comes into this RAAYS mixer, and it's essentially, each line, each synth, no coast, peak, summit, master level out goes into this Auto Machines compressor, which just kind of squashes everything. It makes it feel nice and rich. And that's the synth chain essentially, of this rig. Also, this is my Novation Launchpad Mini, and that's how I'm controlling the show and running the songs and running Ableton playback. And I have everything up here mapped in 2 different ways. Under my user function, you can see I have them labeled, and those are the song titles. And so because of that, I'm able to also change the set list up on the fly if I want to, and I'm able to kind of trigger and fire off any song as I'm feeling, or as we are playing. So it's more natural, less like I'm in control of the computer the entire time, and it feels more like we are free to play and have like room to kind of improvise and go off grid and just kind of do our thing, that kind of thing. So the majority of time I'm spending on this on the Novation Summit. It's pretty much always I always have a hand on it to some extent. The other thing is also Peak is receiving MIDI information from Ableton for its playback, as well as I'm also able to play it. So there's certain songs that I'm using a patch on here, and I'm controlling it, I'm playing it, and I'm doing something over here or like this. I can kind of be in any one of these configurations at any time throughout the show. It all just kind of depends on where I mapped different synth sounds and stuff. Because it's not just necessarily like this is all low stuff and bass and this is all high. This is like it definitely functions on both levels, where sometimes this turns into just a blank patch with no information at all, which is when I'm using it to actually trigger samples within Ableton. So depending on each song, basically when I fire off the scene to start the song, all of the information on my Novation Summit and on my Novation Peak, they get programmed information and automatically change patches and do all of the patch changing for me. So right when I fire it off, Ableton tells it which patch to go to, and you know, kind of like off to the races after that. And sometimes that patch would be blank, so I'm just literally only controlling and triggering, you know, synths and audio in Ableton. And then next to this is a little PC4 fader Fox, and this is essentially just a MIDI knob controller. So these are all mapped. I know where they're mapped, just kind of because I mapped them all on my own. But basically the way I run it is my first channel. This goes the same all the way up. So we can go ahead and, like, you know, this is always a reverb send. This is always a delay send. And this, well, I'll skip over here really quick. This is also just a plugin that I use a lot. It's called the WUV by K Devices, and it's essentially just like a saturated tremolo that really just kind of chops up and manipulates auto. And I have it set to depth and rate at the same time, so the more I turn it all the way up, it's all the way deep and it's going faster, and then it kind of goes down all together like that. And each one of these channels, I basically have one of those on the beats, on my drones and ambience, like pads that are coming out of Ableton. This is all of my synth stuff. This one's actually empty at the moment. I'm sure I have 4 faders, which I just can't wait to, like, slow down and figure out where I get to send these 4 faders, map them. This is, we are playing some tracks with vocal playback for the collaborations that I did with Kimbra and Bat for Lashes. And so this is the same thing where I can kind of manipulate the vocal as we're playing live, just so it kind of, like, you know, makes it a little more playful. And I don't think people really realize that it's actually getting manipulated by me on the fly in random ways. And then at the bottom I have, this is kind of like another kind of secret weapon under the hood in Ableton that I use, and this is kind of the way that I use, it's the way that I'm able to do seamless crossfades in the songs, because when you fire off scenes, obviously it starts a new trigger, starts a new scene. And what I have is I have a drum rack full of samples, and those samples are all set with a really long release time. So whenever I fire the next scene, the audio just stops getting triggered, and it just seamlessly fades out on its own. And so that's how I can crossfade songs without hearing, like, some kind of audio clip trigger start. Yeah, so this is basically all dedicated to those, so I can manipulate those. And sometimes they get to a point where it hits a loop, so it's just always triggering some sort of drone or ambience, so that it's gonna, and when I stop and start the next thing, it's gonna crossfade and let it go. This is actually, well, this right here is how I'm running my audio, like the actual hardwire audio outs. Oh, that's right, because I wanted to get to this. This send right here is basically just going to my H9, so I'm able to send all of those tracks within Ableton, my beats, my drones, my synths, my the vocal stuff, and the kind of the ambience drum racks. I'm also able to send things to this, and so you can see, like, this is getting triggered, and I can send it, you know, when it gets signaled to, like, green right here, you'll see that it comes up and it's getting signaled. And basically this is just kind of set to another tremolo. I really like a lot of space, like stereo field tremolo stuff, and like getting nice and wide. It's kind of just like one of the new sounds that I've just been really into, effects wise. So I have one of those on the desk here. And this is how I am sending my audio back to Ableton. It's basically over Cat5 or Cat6 audio, and it's a 4-channel snake. 2 of them are coming out of this. Another one is going out of that, and that's kind of how I'm sending it back to Ableton over here. And this is actually broken right now, but I was also doing the same thing with USB, where I was sending it back with Cat5 back to the station. This is the brain, as we call it. I use a Motu ultralight USB-C half rack audio interface, and I'm sending out. Things are plugged. This is the receiver for the Cat5. So these things are all hardwired and patched into my direct boxes, and there's things coming out of here, going straight into the DI, which is going to front of house, and these are basically beats. This is my synth lines. This is the bass, and I'm also triggering bass, and sometimes bass is playback, sometimes bass is me. These are the vocals, mine as well. And then these two are the effects, the TC electronic, or the Eventide H9. And they all come back here, and they're all being traveled over here. And this is another line over here that goes over to our drummer, who's using an SBD and a modular system, and that's his audio is coming in via this. All of the audio is also split out of the outs of the throughs of the radio DI box into this PreSonus Studio Live digital console, and this is basically what is using our ear mixes. So we're able to self-run our inner mixes, and this is obviously our in-ear receivers or transmitters. So these things are routed; they're receiving from the radio and from here. There's kind of like a lot of different things going on back there in the patch world, which is just an absolute mess. And then basically, yeah, they go back into there, and I'm also able to control it over here. So this is the interface, basically that, and that's kind of how we can like move the faders if we need. But pretty much like as we go, it's kind of set and stop and forget, you know. And then this is my Ableton session. Could look like a mess for some people, but to me it makes complete sense. But it is also going into this, because this does get interesting, just because, you know, I have everything basically separated out, you know, under individual groups and stuff like that, and you know, all these things are going on inside. Eats my synths, and also some, you know, like the Ableton triggered synths. Everything's kind of coming out of, you know, kind of part and parceled out. So front of house mix has, you know, a lot more control over how he can mix out front. But over here we have a send that's coming from this Motu and going out here to the modular rig across stage. And we're able to send audio, any piece of audio on that's coming into this setup, and send it back to him so he can manipulate it, you know, as we go. And he's also able to send, like, because we receive a drum feed from front of house for our ears, and so sometimes we can even send that, so we're able to manipulate his live drumming and you know, things like that. I have two different lighting systems too that I'm triggering out of Ableton as well, and this is basically all of its cues, and everything works on scene launch. So, you know, like once I fire off a scene, you know, they start kind of getting all of their information, and these are different colors and the different, you know, kind of setups, and they go through, they receive a MIDI note like that, and they basically turn on and change in whatever scene it is, as I'm triggering everything. And this is coming out of here and going into this, which is actually the lighting console. It's a separate system, and it's communicating via MIDI or USB back and forth. So it fires it off, and the out is going to that over USB audio or USB. And then there's another separate lighting system, which is these guys down here on the floors. These are kind of our big, like, white bright beams, and they're actually internally run by Ableton, which is right here. And that feed is a box that basically converts this interface to you know, to lighting. So it's as simple as you know, right here we can just kind of grab it and turn these up, and so it's basically getting, you know, same kind of thing. It receives triggers and it tells it what to play as it goes through, right under here. Same kind of thing. As it rolls through, it receives a cue of some sort, and that cue will then fire off, you know, this look, whatever this is, I'm not sure, but basically once it hits it, it tells it to do it. And that's basically it underneath the hood of the scene of Ableton. And you can follow me on socials at The Album Leaf. My music's available everywhere at DSPs, all digital streaming services, and hit the www.thealbumleaf.com for all info, tour dates and all of that stuff. Also Bandcamp, all of my vinyls sold on Bandcamp, Bandcamp /The Album Leaf. And yeah, that's it.